Good evening. So, we went to see a show tonight. Uh, my husband, my son, and myself, done at our sister's school, and it prompted some conversation on the drive home. And we were talking about shows that you've seen once and maybe didn't like, and it sours you on the show. This arose as a topic of conversation over the course of talking about the show and shows as we drove home, not specifically about this show, not liking the show or anything like that. Uh, but we were talking about having a relationship with the subject matter of the show. The show is not it's about Shakespeare, or it draws heavily on the works of Shakespeare, but it's not Shakespeare. But if you know Shakespeare, the show makes a whole lot more sense. And so my husband and myself, who have been doing theater for a really long time, and I've read Shakespeare and done Shakespeare, had a very different reaction to the show than my son, who has not had a great deal of exposure to Shakespeare. His exposure to Shakespeare is high school English, because our theater doesn't do a lot of Shakespeare. Um, so he did not he didn't get the jokes, a lot of them. He didn't. There was one whole section of story that he didn't understand. He understood he understood it, but he didn't know why is that there, because he didn't realize that it was essentially a chunk of Shakespeare turned into a soap opera. Um, so it was it was an interesting conversation from a couple different standpoints. So we talked about going back and seeing theater that you have already seen before, and how you shouldn't let one experience sour you going and seeing a show somewhere else by other people. Which also led to a conversation between me and my husband about seeing shows that other people have directed or designed that you have also directed and designed. And as a professional, you want to go and see those things. But there's a very fine line between sitting back and watching somebody else's work and really enjoying it, and then there's inevitably the comparisons that are going to come up in your head. Um, and hopefully the show is engaging and beautiful, so you are looking at it from an artistic standpoint. And maybe, I mean, I pick shows apart, technically not in a bad way, but because it's what I like. So I'm like, okay, how do they do that, and how do they do that? And I'm looking at the lighting, and I'm looking at the set, and I'm looking at where the break points are to see how things move, and anticipating what's going to happen, and in the technical end of things. And I find that to be a lot of fun. So when I say pick apart, I mean, really analyze, not like pick apart as in nitpick. And anyway, um, so it's really, and I think I've appreciated this as I've gotten older and worked more, that you really do want to go back and see other things from other people's perspectives, because it gives you a very different view. Um, like maybe at some point when my son has a more understanding of Shakespeare and he sees this show again, he will think very differently about it. Uh, my husband was saying that he saw the first time he saw Spelling Bee, it was not a very good production, and it really soured him on it. And it was a few years before he really wanted to go and see it again, even though it has been in our area in one theater or another for many years. It comes up in the cycle quite a bit. Um, but it was years before he really even wanted to go, and then he watched it and he said, oh, this is very enjoyable, and it's a funny show. So as we grow as people, obviously our perspective changes, and those hard lines kind of ebb a little bit. And as artists, we never want to close ourselves off to looking at other people's work, um, seeing where we can learn from other people's work, and appreciating and enjoying it, because part of being a patron of the arts is looking at those differences and appreciating them, because you can have one script, different directors, designers, and performers, and you could know the same story going into it, and you could see a different show every single time, and that is just magnificent. I mean, that's magic. We did Revolutionists last year. I think it was last year. Um, first show of uh, first show of 2021 school year. We did Revolutionists. Um, and this year they're doing it at the school down the road, at the college down the road. And I was taking a look at some of their set pieces just from some of the publicity photos that are posted, and very different style, different setup. And it's great. And you look at that and say, oh, I wonder how they're going to do that. I wonder how they're going to do that. Because you want to see it done differently every single time. Shakespeare, you can do a million different things with Shakespeare. Um, and every time you see this, even if you know the story, it's going to be a different show every single time. So just because you've seen it already doesn't mean you shouldn't see it again. Again, that is the beautiful thing about live theater. It is always going to be a different experience every time you see it. Um, I've seen The Foreigner, I don't know how many times, and it's still freaking hysterical every single time I see it. Um, and I've been fortunate that every single time I've seen it, it's been done well, uh, because comedy is hard, um, and physical comedy is even harder. So go and don't shy away from things that you've seen before, even if you didn't particularly latch on to it the first time. Go and see it, go and support it, and find something new every time you go and see it. Uh, that is my speech of the day. Um, it's always going to be new. It's You go back to your favorite movie over and over again, and that's always going to be the same movie. And we all have our favorite. I'll watch The Princess Bride every time it's on. I'll watch The Fifth Element every time it comes on. Um, but it's not the same as going to a show that you have seen in a new theater, even in the same theater 8 years later. It's going to be different, and it's going to be an experience. So have a great night, everybody. Thank you so much.